Can you share right now about the history of the book briefly?
Oh, well, so in...
I want to point out the book. This is the 5th edition?
This is actually not, this is the first edition of the Flora.
The first edition of the Flora. Maybe share a little bit about this edition.
Well, I'll tell you then, okay, so the
This
endnotes
book
in
weighs
the very
10
back,
pounds.
though, if you want to
10
read
pounds of knowledge is in this wonderful book.
So Floyd and I, well, so I started working, so Floyd had produced his original 1969 version of the, and I'll show you, if you open the very end note, almost the exact back of the book. Right here, you see that book he's holding in his hand? Right here?
Oh, yeah.
That brown book?
Yeah.
That's Floyd's 1969 Plants of the Chicago region. Basically, he had because all the people had at the time was Thornhill's 8th edition of Gray's Manual, 1950, and Gleason's New Britain and Brown, that they were were using to key things out, and that was 5,000 plants. So Floyd, for Herb Lamp of Northeastern Illinois University, asked Floyd if he would produce a list of all the plants in the region that he had seen, so that they wouldn't have to go to, they could process and eliminate as they went down to the keys in those big books. So Floyd produced the lamp list. That was the lamp list. That was actually the first thing. And then in 1969, he produced this book, which was a checklist of all the species, but with maps that said what counties they were from, and with associates, plants they grew with.
So he started the associates.
Floyd started that, which he picked up from Dean.
Yeah.
And and here's a picture of Ray looking at, this is the rare Muhlenbergia cuspidata, which he had never in his life seen, but he recognized it because it hadn't been collected or seen since the turn of the last century. And he recognized that as the rare Muhlenbergia cuspidata. This was in the Little America piece that he showed me at Lockport.
Oh, at that part.
Yeah. So that's what he's doing. He's collecting a sprig of this Muhlenbergia cuspidata and going to make a specimen. And so anyway, that's that book. So that was 69. And when I got there in 74, Floyd had already produced a 1974 edition, which I actually was the one to put the dots on the maps. That was it, 'cause that was my first thing that I did, and so, and then.
Is that amazing?
Yeah, it's amazing.
Dots on a map?
I put dots on a map. There's a little white book, it was about like that. Cheaply made. There was about 250 of those made, the 69 and about 500 of the 74 edition. And then I started writing keys to myself because the plant identification keys, so I could help myself identify all these plants in the checklist. And so when Floyd wanted to produce another volume in 1979 of the Plants of the Chicago region, he inserted my keys in there to help people identify the plants as well as the habitat and stuff. And so that was how I got involved with Floyd on the 79 edition. And then time went by, and people were clamoring for an update because the nomenclature was way out of date and all this and whatnot. And the Indian Academy, the Arboretum didn't want to do it, so the Indiana Academy of Sciences said, would you do another edition, a 4th edition, and we'll fund it and we'll pay for it. They didn't fund it, but we'll publish it. And so Floyd and I said, sure, and we did. It was actually the first Flora that Floyd did on a computer.
How many counties are there?
22.
22 counties.
And so he typed it on, because the weed thing was so important to me, because what Ray had showed me about the weeds, I wanted Floyd in the association list. You see, if you show people what an association list looks like for, like, say, a typical species, like, say, these are all the plants that it grows with in the various habitats. So Floyd, I wanted, and we did it in here too. So if the plant was non-native, I asked Floyd, would he put the non-native species whenever they appeared in an italic type font? Well, all he had was, this is for the 79 edition, and he had just a brand new IBM Selectric that had the little typing ball elements. That if you could put one in, it would type one kind of thing. You put another one in, type another thing. The 79 edition, he did that. He put them all in italics.
He changed the ball on the typewriter.
Changed the ball every time he got to a weed.
Every time it came to a non-native plant.
Every time he came to a non-native, he changed the ball.
And roughly how many species are in here?
In this one?
Yeah.
About maybe 3,000.
3,000?
In this book.
Species, 22 counties. And everyone has associates. So every
And also a lot of insect association.
The first time.
Yeah, first
This
time.
is with
It's
Laura.
never been done before in Flora. And then
How did you meet Laura?
Oh, well, Floyd introduced her. Yeah.
Floyd introduced you?
But before that, we did the '94 edition together.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Which was we modified the keys a little, and we got tighter associate lists, and better distribution data, and it was quite a book. People loved that. That was the green one, with the
Yeah,
big-
it's the last one I had.
That's the last one you have, and then
Until this came out.
and then time went off, and then I thought I was done. I wasn't going to do any more Flora stuff. And Floyd was off to other things, and then, but when I was working, he met Laura Rorica,
Uh-huh.
who was my co-author in this later, and he was so impressed because she could tell any bird there was, it could fly. We could be looking at a plant, and behind her, she'd hear a ruffling in the bushes. Oh, that's a yellow rump warbler. She knew everything, and she knew the life history. She was like a walking encyclopedia of birds. Okay, so Floyd was just so impressed. Tell him by sound, sight, you name it. There wasn't anything about a bird she didn't know. All right, and so, but Floyd kept trying to introduce me to her, and I, but he was always impressed with people. How could anybody be that impressive? I'm sure Floyd's, into his hyperbolic mode on this person who was nice to him, so I figured that's what it was. Then I finally met her at a meeting at the Forest Preserve, and we were talking about it. So we got to talking about poikilotherms and homeotherms, and he was, and how they interface the world a different way. And he was a lady who knew what the heck I was talking about. I thought, wow. And then I kind of talked to her furthermore, a little bit.
So after meeting her.
And then we got to talking. I thought, my God, this woman, we need to get her knowledge out there.
Right.
And she had been also studying the insects with Floyd, up until he died.
Was she always is she with Cook County Forest
She was
Preserve?
with Cook County Forest Preserve, volunteer at first, and then Floyd became her mentor, and he taught her insects and all that sort of thing. And so, then Laura and I decided to do this book, which was a much updated nomenclature, much updated keys, much updated distribution, and all of the insect pollinators, and any insect that had a intimate relationship with any of our plants, she put in here. So there's over almost 2,000 insects.
Almost every plant.
Most of the weeds don't have many.
Yeah, most of the non-native plants.
Most of they're not real rich with insects, but the natives are if they're in their habitat. Now, the native planted in a garden doesn't have much, but a native, like if you put lead plant in a garden, you might get a couple of bees and
It doesn't have the context.
It's not a remnant.
Yeah.
And so but it has 80 species of bees in a remnant.
Mm-hmm.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
So these plants in remnants, that's where all the insects are. So you have people who aren't telling people, well, if you plant a flower garden or a native plant garden, you'll wind up you'll heal the world with all the insects. They'll come. Well, they don't. So with the 450 species of bees that we have, Laura, except never seen more than 16 bees in a highly diverse planted garden. They're all in the remnants.
Whether even if it's
that plant.
totally native plants.
Even if it's native plants.
And usually I find a lot of the native planted gardens, they're not that diverse.
They're not that diverse, and the thing is, even if they were diverse, like at Schulenburg Prairie, which has been there as the best prairie restoration on Earth, because they burn it every year. It's just, there's 12 to 15 species per quarter meter square, and they have a mean C value in the 6s, which is unbelievable. So it's a high quality. But we went out there and looked at bees and the arboretum, and there's only one conservative bee after all those years in '62 at the arboretum at the Schulenburg Prairie.
So the prairie was started in '62.
Yeah, but the insects don't come. They're stuck in that. They're forced. They stay in their remnants.
What is that? What has to happen there?
Nothing.
Just time?
It's over.
Just nothing.
That's why I say you can't. It won't grow back.
Yeah.
Maybe eventually, if you had enough of those gardens connected up and they became healthy perennial gardens with no mixing of the soil and became stable, and they were next to a remnant or next to something, maybe eventually you could do it. But they don't. You can't get there are some insects that grow on the same square meter every year. They don't go off that meter.
Huh. And without, if anything changes there, they're
it's
done.
over.
It's over. They're done. Wow.
And so that's how fragile the whole thing is. And so,
And what you have here in this book, that shares a lot of those feelings and emotions and thoughts.
oh yeah, that's it.
Especially plant relationships. And then
What this has taught me, what Ray's taught me initially was although it was a nascent, inchoate understanding in '72, was that while scientists have plenty of deep thoughts about this and that,
yeah,
you know, they have theories and things, and they get PhDs and have professorships, and everybody likes to read their books and their theory. But the only people, but they're just human, and they're infinitely ignorant, and they tell you only what they think they know. Sometimes they're not truthful about that if it gets in the way of a changed doctrine, that they don't want to admit that their whole life was not perfect in the way they thought of it. But plants never lie to you.
right,
They're not tenure tracked. They're not ego driven.
right.
They simply grow there, and if we're gentle with where they grow, they will flourish. And we can see what we do, then that makes them flourish, and we keep doing it. Or they can languish, and we can say, I better adjust my behavior in this place because they're continuing to languish. So they'll teach you how to manage the land. But you have to know them.
You have to pay, right.
To pay attention. That's how they. But if you want to know the truth about nature, you don't get it from scientists. You get it from the plants and animals.
Right.
I'm not saying scientists aren't important. They help us with things.
Yeah.
Help us learn how to think and how to
Right. Well,
evaluate stuff. But I'm just saying, if you're looking for scientists for some sort of, as if it was the written word of God, what comes out in their textbooks, it's not.
Well, it seems sometimes they're so focused that they don't see all the other connections to something.
Right. Exactly.
You know,
They're
people
too
study-
siloed,
yeah,
particularly
right,
today,
right.
where someone like Thomas Jefferson, who rode horses everywhere and could see things, is so much aware of what was going on, much more aware than a lot of scientists today.
Yeah.
'Cause he looked at, but there was, and anybody, in fact, I used to imagine what it'd be like because George Rogers Clark, or any of those guys, for example, when George Rogers Clark in 1775 was walking from Louisville, Kentucky, on the Falls of Ohio to St. Louis, he walked or rode a horse. So all that whole time, he was just thinking,
Yeah.
looking at stuff. This leaves, and that leaves, and this animal does this and does that. And it's going to rain, the leaves doing this. There's so much to learn.
Right.
We get in a car
That's
now, and we take from Louisville on the interstate, get to St. Louis, and find a Super 8. Then go out and eat at the Steak and Shake.
Right.
We haven't learned a thing.
Oh.
The whole world's blown by us, and we don't see it.
Right.
And so therefore, we can't see it going away.
Mhm.
We can't see it evaporating in front of our eyes.
Right.
We can't see the remnants the Americas that we're tearing apart without even realizing it, or the Americas that we're neglecting without realizing it.
Mhm.
Not that we're bad people, but we just don't know.
Right.
Just like my father once told me when I was a kid. He said, maybe a young man. He said, son, he was a pilot, and he said, son, I'd probably come in late one night and maybe wasn't perfect. You know what I mean?
Right.
And he said, son, you're running out of altitude, airspeed, and experience. That'll lead to a graceful landing. And it doesn't matter whether you meant well, tried hard, said your prayer, told your mom please and thank you, did your math homework, fed the dog without being told, you'll still die.
Right.
Not because you're a bad person, but because you broke a natural law. You didn't pay attention to power, lift, and drag on that particular airplane or in your particular life. And so I realized that nature isn't something that will forgive you if you screw up. Just like the sea won't forgive you if you take your boat into a hurricane,
Mhm.
or you don't know how to navigate. It's a merciless thing. Beautiful, actually exquisitely beautiful if you know what you're doing and are attentive to the laws.
Well, it's like you mentioned, it's like George Rogers Clark.
Yeah.
If you're taking a path and paying attention,
You
you
learn
can't help
things.
but understand and learn.
You'll learn things, but we don't know anything today,
Mm.
and we're learning less and less. And they're not teaching. You can't get an advanced degree, or any degree really, in botany in any university hardly today. I was one of the last to get one in 1984 at SIU because of Mohlebrock. But the universities, and this is the same way Chris Anker will tell you, with wildlife biology. You can't get a degree in wildlife biology where you've actually touched animals and felt them and seen them and watched them and see how the vagaries of their behavior. So these things come out, and Chris you know, who doesn't have the PhD in wildlife biologist, can't compete with these people. He sees all this stuff going on. These animals really doing what animals really do, sometimes in different ways in different places. And these PhDs who said behavior of the red fox in the such and such a situation, as if that's, and their little brief PhD study watching that fox do what they did there, they think that's the answer. They don't know.
That's a focus moment.
And then they go off and teach or something, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and then, but Chris, who's done it all his life, knows that it's far more complex than that. Mm-hmm. And he's learned it not from these geniuses, but from the foxes themselves, who don't lie.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I know you know, because I watched you all your life. You have let plants. You can tell it yourself, but you have seen that when you plant a plant, you're telling that little plant, God bless it, that that's the little place I'm putting you, and you better grow there, otherwise I'm not going to like you, you know, or we're going to have to plant you somewhere else. But that poor little thing has to sit there. You have to empathize with that plant.
Right.
You know, where you're planting this plant, you got to give it the water, you got to give it the attention. It's friends that it needs.
Well, you create relationships.
Great
around it.
relationships,
Yeah,
and these are things you can't get in books.
And have an understanding how those relationships will evolve.
Yeah, and that,
Well, you're right. It's simply listening to the plants. Each one has its own story and shares its direction and how it can go from a youth to an adult.
Yep.
And who it can do that with.
Yeah.
And I think when you look at the volume, the people buying your book, that's where I always look at. There's good things finding a way to happen.
Yeah.
There's not sometimes as dramatic as I'd like it to be sometimes. And I always go back to questioning myself, because I'm the first one. I need to keep assessing.
Yeah.
To see if I'm following a better direction.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to share what I do with others.
Yeah.
Unless I reassess it 5 or 6 times to make sure it's better thought out than I'm rushing in this. And when I remember the first book, I think I got the '79 edition.
The red one?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I got the red one.
Mm-hmm.
And I took that home. I was at Natural Garden. I just started Natural Garden.
Yeah.
I couldn't sleep at night.
Oh, really?
I was looking through associations.
Yeah.
And it was just so interesting. Here's a plant, and here's who these plants live with.
Yeah.
Then I started, well, at what rate? How did they get to be friends?
Yeah.
How did they associate together? What was their relationship? And I had no answers to that.
And there still isn't one.
No, I just had the questions.
And I'll tell you, Roy, that I've told you this before, but if you put a quadrat down in these woods when the flowers come out, and every 5 paces you put a 1/4 meter quadrat down and take an inventory of the species in there, it looks all the same, you know, with the dentaria and the geranium, and you think it's all the same. But you start, if you analyze quadrat by quadrat through that remnant that all looks the same, and you take the number of species, 2C over A plus B, where C is the number of species in common in each quadrat against each other, and then list B and list A are the ones in this quadrat or that quadrat, and you compare them, and the average coefficient of similarity is rarely more than 0.7. Every place on the globe that's remnant is unique to the world. Just like every baby born of the earth is unique to the world. Yeah. So is every little square meter of creation that's still alive is unique to the world. Yeah. So if you save one word or a part of wood, you haven't saved the whole. It's like if you have 4 children, if I say, basically 4 of your children, if I say you can get rid of 3 of them and just keep one, think of all the potential you've thrown away, all the uniqueness. And then each of these, I don't know how you even talk about this, but there's just like a spirit, what the Greeks call the genius loci.
Yeah.
And then, or you can make it this big, and there's a spirit of that too. There's this little spirits in the big spirit. Right. And you go to a whole acre, there's many spirits in that spirit.
And that
it's all one big spirit with interwoven little spirits.
These aren't everyday discussions we have with people.
No.
But yet for me, there's a place I can go where that becomes something I can at least come into grips, a conversation with myself with.
Yeah.
But again, it's hard to, like you and I are sitting talking, it's hard to talk back and forth about it. But as soon as you say that, I can sense that, and I find like I always tell you about, I go to Ball Bluff.
Yeah.
Once I get to Ball Bluff, I see that spirit of something that has a home in each of us and each thing we live with. But again, it's not a conversation you have
No.
that, you know, well,
And you can't explain it, but
No.
it's like there's all these sort of spirit, whatever you want to call it.
it's a feeling,
There's feeling,
emotion,
but your
spirit.
spirit gets
Yeah.
somehow interwoven in it, and so
Mm.
you become aware of that change that goes on in you as you are
Right.
aware of
And
this other.
it's an odd thing just for me, when I'm on Instagram,
Yeah.
when I see people sending me things, you kind of see that's their sense of being, their sense of spirit. They take a moment and they see something that moves them emotionally,
Uh-huh.
and then it's how does that relate to how they live, how they feel,
Yeah.
how they share with others. So, but I just, every time I see an Instagram, I relate to it in my own way.
Yeah.
And then I think, but they captured something of themselves they're sharing with us
Yeah.
for that moment.
Something that moved their soul.
And then you just hope it all can get deeper so that when you look at how do we heal the earth and how do we share more of ourselves with it, I have to say this book, it always makes me rethink. Like I can look up Carrick's Pennsylvanic in here. And if I look up Carrick's Pennsylvanic, I can find so many associates with it.
Including all those ants that are important.
And I never think of that either till I see that in there.
Yeah.
And you think it's just not planning it for aesthetics, but also for so many other outcomes that
Yeah.
naturally occur with that.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm always encouraged, especially when I'm at my most discouraged.
Yeah.
I get more encouraged.
Well, yeah, you see, it's bigger than we are, you know. But it is dangerous that people in our culture do not see the world going away, do not see that beauty.
No.
And you know, when you look at the woods there, you look at all the different trees, how that looks beautiful. But every tree is a little bit here and there bent and crooked, and
Right.
not like all the others. They're all a little imperfect, like we are.
Yeah.
But what's beautiful about nature is all of those imperfect things, whether it's a little toothwort, which every little toothwort's different, a little imperfect from the archetype, but it's that imperfection of all individuals growing in harmony that's beautiful.
Yeah, that's very true.
It's when you put the lollipop trees and the poodle
Right.
shrubs in the corporate campus, it's not beautiful.
Yeah.
They're all, this is warning sign, Daddy, all order. It's not
Yeah,
beautiful.
the
And
correct
there's
spacing and then
nothing beautiful about perfect.
no, it's it's true. But it's that once it's said, it's a thought. That's something. Hopefully, what you just said resonates to people. So that's true.
It's the harmony that's beautiful.